Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Happy New Year. We are back in Miami with the Miami Boss podcast. And I got to tell you guys, I have a very, very special interview, very special guest today with us. I'm gonna introduce you guys to him in a minute. But like I said before, every business, every area in the globe right now is a technology business. Everyone is using technology. It's not something that you're just going to put on the side and, hope for results. Now, people in all areas of the government, private sector, all areas of the election, as you could see, I'm sure you guys may have received text messages and other sort of data analytics trying to get you to the polls. Technology is really, driving better results, faster results, and really giving users things that, source of information and speed that we've never seen before. So the Miami Boss podcast is really just to do that. It's to bring in leaders in the community, people that are game changers, people that are doing things, one, using methodologies, but also from a standpoint of technology, leveraging technology to win business, to win outcomes, and to also, in the public service area, who our special guest is today is Judge Woody Clermont. So please welcome Judge Woody Clermont with us today.
Hey.
Judge, thank you so much. I'm honored to have you here on the Miami Boss podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here, and it's always a pleasure. I always want to make myself available to the public because, as a judge out there in the community, you always want to have people who listen to your needs. If you're voted in by the people, then you're answerable to the people.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I kind of stumbled upon Judge Clermont here because, I was involved in the city of Pompano Beach commissioner's race and helping out several commissioners, all of which won. And, I figured, hey, it'd be great to get involved into the election. But when I read and I started to learn more about your story, I was fascinated, right? So, I would love for you to share that story, a bit about your background and your journey with our audience here. I mean, we've had thousands of reach, and we have people that listen to this podcast throughout the nation and abroad. So really want to understand, what did that journey look like to becoming a judge in Broward County?
Well, you see, I started off in Brooklyn, New York, which is a hub of activity. I mean, New York City is one of the biggest cities on the planet. And you can take the man out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the man. I grew up around what's an area known as Flatbush. And I had parents who were Haitian immigrants, which is, I myself am a Haitian-American. And so as a result, they instilled very strong values in me from a very young age. I went through probably more than 13 years of Christian Catholic schooling. And they always inspired me to be my very best. There was always an expectation of, okay, yes, you had A's in this category and this category, but how can we do better? How can you be the best? My parents never spared any expense. They had to work overtime. They had to work overtime to give me tutors, to get me additional programs to go to always keep me stipulated. They even had a weekly reader book club. And I used to hate it so much because every month, this big shipment, about 5 or 6 books would arrive. And my dad would be like, I paid good money for that. You better read every one of those books.
Right. And by the way, you got straight A's, but why did you get that A-? And that better not happen.
That was it. It's like you're channeling my father right now. Because this is what he used to do. Be like, oh, you have A's in this, and this. Oh, but why does it say, attitude needs improvement? Oh, man, we know we don't tolerate that around here. You need to be excellent. You need to be above average. You cannot come home with a single grade that is less than an A or less than the very best. And so I listened, because he was a tough man, but he was a fair man. If I did what I was supposed to do, then he would always make sure he would support me in any endeavor that I did going up to the top. So eventually I actually went to a high school in New York City in Manhattan, known as Regis High School, which at the time, as I understood it, was one of the, I think was the number one Roman Catholic boys' high school in the country. So it was a very hard to get in, almost as rigorous getting into these other science schools like Stuyvesant or Bronx High School of Science, because you had to take a admissions test, and you also had to go through a series of interviews. I think I went through 3 rounds of interviews with different deans at the school and everything. Wow. And so once I got in, that was a huge thing. Even the celebrity Regis Philbin, his father loved that school so much, he named him Regis after the school.
Wow.
With the expectation that he would grow up and go to that high school. So it was a big thing. And so it also, was able to advance my development as a person in terms of learning the rigorous level needed for academic achievement, but also to become a leader of the future.
So as a judge, Haitian descent, now you're in Brooklyn. Somehow you migrate down to South Florida, right? How do you see that role evolving? And now that you're a judge, representing for all the Haitian Americans, right? And all the ones that are wishing to be in the law field, in the legal profession, and inspiring not just Haitian American, but just people that look like you, that have similar stories of you, like you, right? How do you then inspire that given your role as a judge right now?
Well, I'll say this. Everywhere I've gone, I've let people know about 2 things about me. Number 1 is that I'm a very hardworking individual because, we are in a country that has the American dream, where if we can dream it, we can achieve it. And so I use my story a lot as testament to others that I see the greatness in them. I see the divine spark in them that will allow them to shine if they apply themselves. And secondly is that I have an unwavering faith in God, which I think is very important. And I'm not here to push religion on anyone. You can be whatever religion your heart desires. But having that respect and reverence for a higher authority, it holds you accountable to a lot of things. Because I know that there are things that I need to be doing out there. I know I need to be out there in the community helping people. I know that I do the prison ministry where I go to the jails to spread the word of God to inmates in the jails. I do a lot of activities with children through Kiwanis, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Because again, I'm here to lead the next generation, to give them hope, to give them inspiration, so that they too can enjoy a brighter future, possibly one that will definitely eclipse or even be better than mine. But you know what? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be getting better generation to generation, that what comes next will exceed the last. And that pushes us to the greatness of ourselves as Americans and as human beings as a whole.
No, that's fantastic. Now that prison ministry is spectacular, right? I mean, will you be able to continue that work while you preside over, in the juris, or is that something that may have to be put on hold?
At this point, it's my intention to keep going. Okay. And I know that there are some who have said, well, I don't know, we've got security concerns, but let me tell you something. People that end up in the system, they're not what we think they are, right? I'm not going to say there aren't murderers. I'm not going to say there aren't rapists. But a lot of the individuals I've dealt with are people who got caught up on things, maybe like they didn't renew their license untimely, and so now they're in there because, their license is suspended. And just merely driving a suspended license alone can get you arrested. Or sometimes you might have overzealous law enforcement that maybe think they know the story of what happened with someone, but maybe they don't. And so the people that are in there, there but for the grace of God goes I, a lot of people can be arrested in wrongful situations, and they're awaiting their trials, and hopefully their attorneys will be able to sort out these matters for them. But in the meantime, I'm there to give them the good word. So I was there last night, actually. Okay. And as I prayed with many of the individuals there, they kept saying, you know what, thank God for you, Woody. Thank God for you. Because, we were wondering if you were going to come, because we didn't see you on the 1st, but we understood it was a holiday. But, one of the inmates said, I said, Woody will be here because Woody doesn't break his promises. Woody has told us he's going to be here for us, that he's not here to judge us. He's just here to minister and spread the good word. And he's a good man. I feel in his heart he's a good man. And so I know he will be here. And I showed up and they said, you see, my faith is restored once again, because I know that you're here as a man of God to really help us, to give us direction, to give us guidance. And we know we're here because of situations, but we're here to then correct that and learn how to be better fathers, better husbands, better brothers, and people that are going to be in the community that now have a different attitude, a whole different approach. They're like, you know what, I was young, I was immature, I was stupid, but now I understand, and now I have a mission.
Judge, that's wonderfully said. I mean, it is incredible to have met someone like you. And it really, I mean, for me, it was a chance encounter. I mean, you know a little bit about my story. I haven't shared too much, but, I've been in the family court system for just about a decade now, believe it or not, and so you would think that, hey, it's going to be a divorce and, you're going to separate your things. But, the court system has its challenges, right?
Yes,
and, what is it that you see, or if any at this point, where you feel that technology can help out the scales of justice to be maybe more efficient, perhaps provide more due process rights for individuals that have due process issues? Are you seeing technology, or do you plan to use any sort of technology as you establish your court, and how technology may play a role in that?
That's a very good question. And, I would say this. I came into law at a time when we were still using mainly paper systems. And so I know what the difference is like between then and now. Whereas, sometimes when then you would have things like clerks telling you, oh, I don't know if we can hear that case today. We cannot locate the file. Oh, I don't know. Things aren't documented where they're supposed to be documented. We don't know what happened. The information's been lost. And people that were supposed to have been set on calendar suddenly are off calendar, and their cases may even get lost in the system. But with the advent of technology, a lot of that is being alleviated. There's no excuse now for the file is lost, because the file is hosted on different repositories, particularly backup information, where if anything happens, they're able to get that information, to retrieve that information. And that has made justice all the more swifter and more efficient for people in the system, whether they are petitioners, respondents, plaintiffs, defendants, and so forth. In addition, I actually currently sit on the Florida Bar Committee of Technology. And I routinely go to the meetings, and I'm always being kept in the know of the advancements that are being made. I also used to sit on the Florida Rules of Judicial Administration as well. And through that committee, I became aware of the whole initiative to try to convert as much of court operations to more technology-oriented solutions as possible, in which case we created the e-portal, where now you can literally, instead of having to run to the courthouse and find an interested clerk, you can just automatically file your documents through the internet, through a portal, which is secure. The information is protected. And those pleadings are now, just as quickly as you submit them, as quickly as they're going to be reviewed by the clerk and docketed. So that has a lot better way of us doing things, because maybe somebody might be out of town, and maybe they can't fly back right to the courthouse that second, but they can still submit something through the portal. Zoom technology has also become very big because of the fact that we had COVID-19. And during COVID-19, there was a lot of quarantining and things that were going on that required us to think differently. It's not that we didn't have the telecommuting capacity before, we did. But a lot of people who were still more familiar with paper systems were still kind of reluctant to change over. They were like, I don't like that. I want you here in person, and I want paperwork submitted that I can feel with my hands. And there were a lot of people who were resisting, even though the technology had been there for years. But once COVID-19 happened, there was no more choice. Now you have to allow this, and it's made things all the more better, because sometimes people may have a problem finding parking. Sometimes people may have a problem with their car breaking down, etc., and so forth. But now you can just simply get on your phone, get on your tablet, get on your iPad, and you're in court. Of course, you have to maintain decorum. You can't, go into a court and then the judge asks you to turn on your screen to verify you're there, and you show up sleeping under the covers in bed, barely wearing anything. That's not appropriate. And I've seen it happen. It may sound like a joke, but I've actually seen this happen several times. And, people just don't get it. They're like, would you come to court dressed like that? Then why would you expect that to be tolerable over Zoom? Right?
That's not going to help their case out.
It's not going to help their case out very much at all. It's going to show a lack of respect for the courts, which I think is something that people sometimes have a little issue with, because they're like, oh, well, why do I have to, come in and say Your Honor and be all prim and proper? But it's a system, and it's a system that has to have a certain level of respectability.
Absolutely.
For us to believe that individuals are there to professionally do the work of handling cases in a way that is open, transparent, fair, and has integrity.
Yeah. Yeah, and irrespective of technology, it's not a perfect system, right?
It's not.
I mean, there's still going to be these challenges that
Absolutely
outlie. But it's evolving, right? And you're showing that the technology, in fact, is transforming the court system. You mentioned Zoom. Like a couple of years ago, nobody even knew what Zoom was. I mean, you zoom in on the lens. Now it's like Zoom is like a verb. It's like Uber or Lyft or Airbnb, right?
These are ways in which technology changed the game.
Yeah.
And just to make sure it's clear what I meant when I mean Zoom, I mean teleconferencing, video conferencing software that allows parties to do business through satellite, through the internet system, peer to peer, all these kinds of things, which are very important for people to be able to connect, regardless of where they might be in the world. I've even prosecuted cases where I've had to have individuals from different countries, and it would have been such an inconvenience to them for them to have to now take this trip, come back to court, and then be told, oh no, we're continuing the case, you'll have to come back again in 6 months. And they're like, I took off time from work for this, and I had to fly, and this cost money. Now we have that conferencing technology to be able to have people from long distances still be able to come to court in some fashion.
Judge, I must admit, I've been in the technology field now 25 years, okay? And I've experienced some aspects of the legal profession and my challenges in family court the last 10, okay? And in those 10 years, I gotta say, I've never met anyone quite like you, okay? And I mean this with all sincerity, okay? Degree from Catholic High School, Regis High School, okay? Associates in Science degree in Computer Science, okay? Associates of Science in Mathematics and Technology, Bachelor of Arts, Political Science, Bachelor of Science, Business IT Management from Western Governors University, Bachelors of Science, Mathematics, Mayville State University, okay? I mean, Masters of Science, MBA, Business Administration from Florida Atlantic University, Masters of Science, Data Analytics, it's incredible, right? I mean, my goodness. Masters of Science, Economics from FAU, Juris Doctor in Law from University of Miami. I mean, my goodness, man. I mean, so...
I think I just got tired of hearing you recite that.
I can't even list it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's
no
a lot of
shortage.
education, but again, I guess that comes back to the upbringing that I had. That I had parents who instilled in me this desire to continue to be excellent as much as possible, and so I've always been drawn to technology. I mean, literally in 1982, my father's taking me to Chinatown to go look for a different computer to put in my room to keep me occupied. In addition to all those books I had to keep reading from month to month. Now I'm hopping on a Timex Sinclair. I'm hopping on a Commodore 64. I'm trying to load this big floppy disk in there, and it was but it taught me a lot. And I started to learn different languages like Fortran and Pascal and Basic. And then next thing you know, they started volunteering me to other kids. I had a kid from college come in. And I'm only 15, and they're like, yeah, you're gonna tutor him so he can pass his college class. Like, wait, what? Like, why would you volunteer that? Because we told him you were smart. So.
Yeah. And it's like, even now it's like the technology is evolving. You have server-side technologies, you have assembly language, you have, all these, you still have C++ around. I mean, if you walk into any banking system, they're still using
languages.
C++, you still have Java, right? And
yes.
The latest and breaking now is AI, right? Which is wild, right? It's just like, man, it's just even someone that's in tech and you're doing tech every day. There's so many tools to help you become better, faster, more efficient, more thorough, right? And so, and like I was telling you, because we worked a little bit on your campaign data, and what I was telling you was like, well, you have good data, you have good results. You have bad data, you have bad results, right? And same thing with as a judge, I would imagine, right? If you have the most accurate and reliable information, right, and you're able to make these decisions off, that are trusted sources, most likely you're going to make a better result for everyone that you're serving, right? And so for me, I was quite frankly blown away when I saw your background and I saw the computer science aspect of it. And, that really showed me that, number one, you're quite technical. And also you understand the breadth of the business world and all the intricacies of just law in general, obviously as a barred attorney in the state of Florida.
And also barred in New York and New Jersey as well.
Oh my goodness. This is incredible. You just probably never slept when growing up, man. I mean,
Probably not.
Oh my
No,
goodness.
no. Having you drinking coffee all day long.
How do you view AI? How do you view AI in the sense for legal research and case analysis? Are they beneficial or do they pose risk?
Well, I would say this to your audience. Like anything in the world, computer science allows us to do better and better things over time. And one of the things that we have been able to take advantage of is the knowledge that's out there. When I was a kid, we had to go to the library and we had to use a system where you pull cards out of a series of drawers and just be able to find out where in the library certain things were. And you'd have to go from shelf to shelf, pulling book from book. And then you've got to remember where they were and you got to get their citations down, all that. Now I saw the age where we started having a lot of higher storage technologies, like better disk drives, better CD ROM drives and DVD drives, where now the information could be stored onto those media. And then it would make it a little easier to be able to search through that information and find what you needed rather than running from shelf to shelf in a library. Now we've gone one step further because, we have Google and everybody knows all about Google, but rather than just having to go from site to site to site, now you have AI that's going to do that for you. They're going to automate that process. You say, I need to know everything I need to know about a particular subject area. It's going to search, terabytes and terabytes of data all over the internet and find these repositories, extract that information, put it into a cohesive form for you to use that will basically give you a rundown. And then you can also, tell it, look, I want reliable sources, and I want you to list for me at the end all the references you used. So that if I need to, I can go back and check those references to make sure that the information being given to me by the AI is accurate. So that's a game changer because now, even I think I heard one particular individual in the software industry talk about, I don't know if we're going to need as many programmers going into the future because you can literally go to the AI and tell the AI, please write me in Python a code that can achieve X, Y, and Z. And the AI will write the code for you, which means that even that task is now being further lightened for people. So now they're looking for people to be creative thinkers who learn how to interact with the AI to get the information that's needed as quickly as possible. And in the legal field as well, there are things about the AI, but I do want to clarify there was a case out there, and I will make sure the audience is fully aware. There was a case out there where a lawyer used the AI and did not go through the process I indicated of making sure all the citations were correct, making sure all the sources were reliable, just simply accepting what the AI gave and then submitting that to the court. That's a big no-no.
Yes,
you never want to be doing that because the AI...
The AI it's going to hallucinate
it
as
has
well.
hallucinations. It works off of probabilities.
Yes.
It thinks that, okay, something like this should exist out there in the world, so I'm going to go ahead and report on that, but maybe the case law isn't there. And so now if you go to a judge and you start citing imaginary case law, you're going to get sanctioned. It's going to be a big problem for you. So that's why I always tell you, when you extract the data from the AI, go through checking it, making sure it's exactly what it claims it purports to be. Mm-hmm. But once you do that, then, like you said, with the good data and the bad data, then you'll be able to get the good results without compromising your integrity.
So as you get ready to embark, do you know how large your caseload will be?
There'll probably be thousands of cases.
Thousands of cases.
It usually is because you have cases coming in, you have cases that have been there. Ideally, the state court system has benchmark goals and they have rubrics. And so with this, they're evaluating judges because they want to know that the people's taxpayer dollars are being spent efficiently and accurately. So as a result, they're going to be looking to see, well, are the judges moving cases along? Are the judges producing case results that are satisfactory? How is the judge in handling their caseload? There are constant reports that are generated using technology from month to month. And so the biggest thing is that you want the courthouse to be open for redress to the people, right? Because this is what keeps us from going out into the streets and saying, you know what, that guy owes me money, I'm just going to beat the crap out of him. You can't do that, right? That's illegal.
No, that's not.
That's illegal. But if you have a state court system where somebody owes you money and you can file a lawsuit and then you can have them, answer the lawsuit and provide what their defenses are and then go through discovery and figure out why they don't think they owe the money, then you get to go to either a summary judgment hearing or a trial, and you have some outcome determined where now the judgment is awarded in your favor, and you have enforcement means to collect on the judge it. That's going to keep people from going out and beating the crap out of somebody that owes them money, because they're going to be assured the system is there for them to redress their grievances and their differences, as long as it works fairly. But obviously, if people start to lose faith in the system, if they think the system is arbitrary, if they think the judges are unfair, if they think the rules are unfair, if they think things don't get enforced, then you're going to see a lot more people taking matters in their own hands and saying, I don't want to be part of the system because the system's never helped me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And those are just some of the challenges. And another big challenge is cybersecurity, right? I mean, the people that are going to court and that are going through, through meeting virtually, are they who they say they are? Is there, specific ways of identifying the person? Maybe someone's showing up and, they're really someone else, or maybe they're using someone else's identity. So I wonder too, and I wonder if someone, IT guru in the courthouse, in the Broward County courthouse, is concerned about, do they have a way of single sign-on, to make sure that person's there? Are they utilizing something like multi-factor authentication, when they're going to courts, and different people inside the courthouse, right, to make sure that there's data integrity throughout the system when they're logging in. So there are some of the things that, maybe you may not have the answers to that. Obviously, right now, I mean, you're going in and you're not in the IT department, but, as a citizen, that is a consumer to the courthouse, something that I'm sure many people, think about. Do you know how to ensure sensitive information? Are there benchmarks in place that your court is establishing to make sure that all the information remains increasingly secure in a digitized world? I mean, you have situations where cities are being compromised, right? I mean, they're holding ransom for a city. It happened here. I'm not going to mention no name, but we had a client that we're looking for help because the city was literally hijacked, and they had all of the residents' information and private and personal private information, PII data. And are you aware of anything that the courthouse now is doing to try to make sure that everyone's users' data is secure? And also from your standpoint, we've noticed a lot of obviously there's in the news there's been a lot of public outlash towards public officials. Is there things that are technology-wise that is being implemented right now to make sure that the public's data is safe, but also your data as well?
Well, to my knowledge, there is, of course, blockchain technology. And with blockchain, this is not a new concept, right? This is just a concept that's been further refined to provide added layers of security. In other words, when you have data centralization, right, which is where everything is located in just one location, and then you have individuals who are running that IT department or information systems department, and they're not using the most of all the security protocols there, then you can have a situation where a person breaks in and then is able to fool the servers into giving them access to things, and then being able to now take that access away from the officials that are supposed to be running it, from the IT individuals that are supposed to be monitoring it, and then you get held ransom like that. But I know with blockchain, there's decentralization, where you have the information stored on multiple systems. Some of the systems are redundant systems. I know that sounds like a lot of legal jargon, but or technical jargon, but the idea is that if you have the information dispersed into different places and different locations, then no one location that gets compromised necessarily has to bring down the other location, and then that IT team can work on securing that wayward location, whereas they still have the data information in other places.
Absolutely.
So that's something that I believe that, yes, that the individuals that worked towards the court systems, which are actually on a statewide basis. They didn't want it to just be that, okay, this court system develops this court system. That's the way it was in the past. In the past, system, every system was developed by their own individual circuit. But now they've had a mandated statewide initiative where they're looking for the best practices. They're then adopting those practices, and they're forcing each circuit to correspond with those practices or be in trouble, because they want to make sure that across the state, the administration of justice is uniform and that data is safeguarded. Yeah. Now, of course, there are some data that isn't safeguarded anyway, because the public has a right to know what's going on in the court system. So as a result, many court files, like say criminal court files, are open public information, that stealing that data isn't really going to get you very far anyway, because it's there. You can literally be a regular person off the street, go in there and see an arrest report that's going to have a person's address, their information, all that, because once you get into that system, a lot of that doesn't become private anymore, because that's just the way that type of system works. But if it's family, it's going to be different. Family is considered to be confidential and private. So they have a lot of systems that work on redacting information out of family files to make sure that not any person who shouldn't be looking at that file is looking at that file.
Yes, no, absolutely. And even the last 10 years, I've seen this come a long way. I mean, there's something that happened to me where they say I was served, for example, and the attorneys, and it was a dirty little trick that they play in Broward County to say, oh yeah, this person's served. They changed a letter or changed something, that email address, and they proceed to have in court. And then especially if the person's a pro se litigant, that person's kind of left out in the dark, and it's like, oh my God, like all of a sudden they granted everything they wanted. The person's kicked out of their house, before, any sort of notice or anything. And it's truly ex parte communication. Now in the e-portal system, that's the Florida court system that's have throughout the state of Florida, as Judge Woody mentioned. If they change that email address, they have what is called a bounceback. Right. And so the server will go back and say, hey, you know what? There's a bounce back and this person was not notified.
Correct.
Whereas before, they can say, oh, yeah, I notified, whoever, and, proceed to having trial, and that other person really would not know. So that's
you're absolutely correct on that. I went through that in my most recent run as a prosecutor in Miami Beach, where a lot of times we're responsible for getting documents to the defense. So and we also want to file a copy in the court file so that it was known that, hey, we turned around and we provided this information in a timely fashion. They should have an adequate time to prepare for a motion hearing, for trial, and so forth. But, what would happen with that was that this particular, and I don't want to comment on anyone in particular, but just this particular office that we were serving, even though it was the correct information, it still kept bouncing back anyway. And they kept saying that it's a technical glitch. We can't help it. It's just that our system is overloaded, but then this could also wreak some havoc in the litigation, because now they're saying, I never got it. And you have proof and receipt that there's no bounce back and you served it on them, but they're going to say, oh, we couldn't control it. The computer went haywire. We didn't get it. You're going to need to try again. You got to give us more time. And so unfortunately, it's never going to be quite perfect, but it is very helpful in that respect that now we have that ability to know what items are delivered properly and what items are not delivered properly. Now, of course, at the end of the day, some judges in those cases would say, well, you know what? If there is a technical problem, it's on your end, not the system's end. So therefore, you are considered to be served, even though you claim you didn't get it, because we can only put up with there's a problem in your system so long. Why don't you have an IT team fix that problem? Or do you just want that problem to constantly be there to be able to get out of things? Yeah. And then also, additionally, I was going to say, in terms of Zoom technology, or Microsoft Teams, or whatever whatever teleconferencing technology you're using, a lot of times judges will ask people to take their driver's license and hold it up to the screen, to make sure that they're looking at it and to say, that's the person, that this information matches up. And also when you get booked, they're also going to have photographs taken of you at the time of booking with your biographical data, so the judge can then go back to that area to make sure, okay, is this person in court, or is this person over Zoom the person they purport to be, or is it someone else? And then that way they can know that we don't have any impersonators or people that are masquerading in place of a particular party.
That's fantastic, man. It's just you provide so much insight. I really do appreciate some of this stuff, and then I'm gonna get a little bit more into some of the things. But I do want to go back to when you were talking about prison ministries. I just find that really fascinating. As some of the data I was looking at, in particular to Broward County, the jail population by race, right? So African Americans, they're approximately 65%. Of the jail population, while 29% of the county's residents, right? So double, nearly more than double. I find that, I'm a numbers guy. I look at the data, to me that tells me, very disparaging, unfair statistic, if you will. While white, about 30% of the jail population aligning with their 30% share of residents in the population. Latinx, sometimes Haitian and Caribbean, Puerto Ricans are included in this Latinx, around 3% of the jail population, despite making approximately 34% of the residents' population. And then Asian-American Pacific Islanders, each group represent less than 1% of the jail and residents of population. So, these statistics highlight the disproportionate incarcerations throughout the demographic. Can you tell me, what were you, as you were running for judge, right? I know there were a number of challenges. Does that ever come into your psyche to say, hey, you know what? I want to be the change. I want to be the person, the leader, the boss in the community to maybe help understand why is it like this? And then number 3, do you think the technology, especially working in prison ministries, do you think that could be one way of evening the playing field where, defendants and respondents, people that are, in African, Black and African American community, can use technology to help deflect some of these numbers that are, rate of incarceration, nearly double of the current population overall, just in Broward County alone?
Well, I have quite a few answers for that.
Okay.
If the audience will bear with me. In 2011, I wrote an article about what I would call convict slavery. And so convict slavery goes like this. When we passed the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, at a time when we wanted to bring slavery to an end, remember we had a Civil War, you had the Southern states, the Confederacy versus the Union, and there was a lot of back and forth, and Abraham Lincoln was the president at the time. And there was a lot of back and forth over what the status of certain human beings should be in this country, certain citizens should be in this country. And so when that 13th Amendment was passed, it kind of had a flaw that still remains unaddressed to this day, because it's going to take a constitutional amendment to change what is found in the 13th Amendment. But that law goes something like this. Slavery is outlawed in the United States except as punishment for a crime. That's how it reads, and more or less. I may not have, quoted it in its entirety, but that's the gist of what the 13th Amendment reads. And so here's the problem. Right after slavery ended, you had a lot of businesses that relied on slave labor. And they were looking for either equivalent slave labor or cheap labor. So now, okay, yes, we're saying that people are free. But what if you have a system whereby the police officers are instructed to go round people off the streets on accusations that they are loitering, engaging in vagrancy, or any other number of black codes that specifically find someone guilty of a crime, maybe based more on their status than on actual conduct. Because literally a police officer could go up to you after slavery ended and say, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm just hanging out. Well, normal people have a job and go places. Oh, I only see you here. So do you not have a job? No, I don't. I'm looking for a job. They say, okay, well then you're here loitering in this location without a means of employment. You're committing a crime. I'm taking you to jail. And so from that, we had a whole system over decades, right? Because slavery ends in the late 1800s, right? So this happens in the late 1800s going into the 1900s. For years and years and years, that these laws were used to target particularly black men, to use them, because as soon as they would go to before the judge, a lot of them didn't have money, a lot of them didn't have proper legal representation. You know, at the time, the public defender's office didn't even exist yet. And so now the judge is pronouncing the person guilty and saying, your sentence is 5 years to go work on, Williams Plantation. And so now they had an effective way to take people and put them right back to work in the same places they were just liberated from.
Wow.
And that was a system that went on in America for decades. If you hear it from a lot of people in the black community, they will say the people who used to be the slave catchers then became the law enforcement officers. And so that's a problem. And I'm not going to say that, okay, you know what, just because that happened then, that's exactly what's going on today. But I'm then going to say it's a historical contributor to that. Yes. It created a certain mindset, because now you're rounding up black men routinely and you are putting them on what's called a chain gang, where, they've got the either black and white striped suits, or nowadays it's orange jumpsuits. And you're putting them to work in street cleanup. You're putting them to work in mines. You're putting them to work on the plantation. And it was all based on labor needs. I think Angola was a famous plantation in the South, and it was immediately converted to a prison facility. Yeah. And so that created an expectation on law enforcement at the time to go ahead and treat young African-American males that way. Now, over time, people did start to see the hypocrisy in it, and they started to say, you know what, we need to move away from that. So eventually, certain types of black codes were repealed from the books. And even vagrancy, I want to say maybe in the 1970s, was found to be unconstitutional. That you cannot just go around arresting people for status crimes. Because they said, all we really see here is you're basically saying the person's unemployed, the person's in a location, that's suspicious, you're going to jail, you committed a crime. That's not really a crime. What criminal behavior did you actually commit? And so the U.S. Supreme Court had to actually come in. I think the name was Papa Christou or something like that was the name of the case, Jacksonville versus Papa Christou. And it happened, I believe, in the 70s, where they said, no more. We're not going to keep having this anymore. We are not just going to just jail whole groups of people just because the police want to find more labor for certain businesses. But the chain gangs do still persist to this day. Wow. They're not entirely gone.
That's crazy.
In the federal system, I think it's a company called Unicor that works with the federal government, and they have inmates who now are breaking down computer parts with their bare hands, no goggles, no gloves, or protective equipment. But to make it palatable, they now tell them, well, you're in here and you don't really have a job, you don't really have money, but we'll pay you 40 cents a day to do this work. It's better than nothing, right? Because you're going to be here for 10 years and you would like to have money for some nice things. So if you want, let's do this. So now they're telling you, well, because it's being paid for, it's not slavery anymore. But it's certainly not minimum wage. And it's certainly not something you can go to the Department of Labor and say, yeah, they committed a labor violation on me. No, it's still under that premise that we can use inmates in the system to be the cheap labor we need. And so, and there are a lot of folks that when they are asked about it, they'll say, yeah, I love seeing those guys out there in the field working hard, sweating, and this and that, because, that's what this country is about, make people work hard. And it's like, but, is it fair?
Yes.
And so that is still a thing that we have to kind of get out of our system. But now, instead of the vagrancies and the loitering laws, we're now more worried about the certain types of laws that catch up or people get caught up in that tend to disproportionately target African-American males. And so the problem also, and I know this is going on really long, but this is important. I want to say U.S. v. Wren was a U.S. Supreme Court case maybe from the 80s, 90s, where a lot of black men, their lawyers would respond that they were being unfairly profiled and unfairly targeted. And with that, the U.S. Supreme Court came down and said, well, does the officer have evidence or not that a crime has been committed? If they do, we don't want to hear anything about profiling. And so in that broad stroke, they just basically said, officers, just make sure you have your case together, that you can prove a crime was committed, it doesn't matter if you're disproportionately targeting a group of people. We're not going to address those concerns. You know, if they want, maybe file a civil lawsuit and see if you can prove that the department is somehow targeting those people, and you can get damages for that. But as far as the criminal justice system is concerned, they're like, we're not going to bring that into it. Stop bringing race into the courtroom. Stop bringing this and that into the courtroom. Even though people will be able to tell you that that particular officer or that particular department does this all the time. And there were some departments that were exposed for that. There was a department, I think, in New Jersey State Police, that was doing this for a long time. I remember because I was stopped by New Jersey State Police when I was going to college. And I didn't really understand why. And I think was stopped by 2 or 3 times by them. And they always had something.
Yes.
You know, literally, like if I have a air freshener hanging from the rear view mirror, they're like, oh, that's a view obstruction.
Wow.
You know, and so because it's a view obstruction, you don't have perfect unobstructed view. I need to search your car, and I'm going to give you a ticket, and I'm going to give you a hard time, and blah, 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 blah. And now they're trying to, they were told departmentally that they needed to do that so that, you know, with African Americans, they tend to have the drugs. Right. So, you know, you're probably going to find something, and that's a good enforcement technique. If nothing else, you get to run their driver's license, and you can see if they have any outstanding warrants, so that something will stick.
Yeah.
And so the point to that, and I know it's really long-winded.
No.
Is that we are basically in a system that has remnants of that. Even though it may not be exactly what it was way back when, we have remnants of that. Because if nothing else, getting an African American convicted of a crime also disqualifies them from certain rights of citizens. In particular, the right to vote being one of those. And so it really behooves many people who have a political agenda to keep pushing that system forward. It's a form of disenfranchisement. Yes. So, you know, to me, a perfect system is one that is colorblind, that, you know, you're treated fairly without regard to your race, without regard to your color. You know, we are basically only holding people accountable for whatever we can. But unfortunately, our system now also has an economic factor. The economic factor is being that if you're wealthy, if you're affluent, you have means to fight these cases and get out of them. But if you're a community that's struggling, because historically you have not been allowed to grow and acquire assets and have intergenerational wealth, that still becomes a burden for you because now, you know, you don't have the resources to fight that properly. So I think we need to continue to study these things. We need to continue to be on the vigilant look for these things to make sure we don't keep perpetuating these things because it's absolutely important. Once again, I told you earlier about the fairness of the system. If people see that the system is rigged against them, they will not want to be part of that.